So open your files, guys. This is the first sheet, which is the scatter chart. So what exactly is a scatter chart? So scatter plots are often used to find out if there's a relationship between two sets of numbers. Yeah. So consider the numbers as two variables, x and y. So scatter plot helps us find out if there is a relationship between a variable x and a variable y. And hence, a scatter plot, is also called an xy graph. You remember in school you should draw those xy charts. So it's also called an xy graph. It is also sometimes referred to as a scatter diagram. Currently, only 2D charts are supported in Excel. So when we check the menu, you'll see there's no 3D options like we have for other charts. There are some third-party tools which allow 3D scatter charts, but we'll not get into them. We are totally concentrating on what Excel has to give. Scatter plot has dots, which are positioned in the chart based on the X and Y. So depending on what the value is, the dots will be positioned in the chart. So if you noticed, I said the values of X and Y. That is because in a scatter plot, both the horizontal and the vertical axis are value axis, and you can plot numeric data. So if you remember in the bar chart or in the column chart, we have a category axis and we have a value axis. And in 3D charts, we have a depth axis. Yeah. So, but in this particular case, both of them are value axis. Okay. The chart displays the dots at the intersection of an X and Y, and it combines into a single data point. So I'll show that to you. So look at the sheet. In this sheet, I have some data for the publishers. This table shows the advertisement cost for the month of March and the sales generated. Okay, so let's try and find out what kind of correlation do we have between the advertisement cost and the sales. So imagine this is X, this is Y. Okay, so we are going to create a scatter chart. Select B3 to C13. Once you have selected that, click on the Insert tab if it is not already active. And then in the Charts group, you'll see this is the Charts, Insert Chart, XY or Bubble Chart section. Click on that. Alternatively, you can click on Recommended Charts, go to All Charts, and then you can also select Scatter from here. So when you select Scatter, these are the different options. Let's select the first one and click on OK. I'm going to make this slightly bigger. And the scatter chart is populated. One important tip, guys, is best to have the independent values on the left side. Okay, and the values for which you want to find the correlation, keep them on the right. So always remember that. That's a very important tip. Now let's go ahead and let us add a trend line to this chart so it becomes easier to read the chart. Okay, so right click. If you remember to add the trend line, right click on the data series and add trend line, or you can also do it from the chart design. I already explained that. Yeah, you can add a linear trend line from here. Also, you can add it from here as well. Yeah, so you add a linear trend line, and we have added the trend line. So I hope everybody has reached here. Yeah. Okay. Now let's go ahead and let's format our scatter chart a little bit so that it looks much better than what we have, and then we can talk about it. Let's select this particular color. Okay, and I am going to delete the grid lines. Okay, this as well. And to read. Yeah. Just by looking at this trend line, you can gauge how the data is correlated. So there can be three kinds of correlation. First is positive, second is negative, and the third is not correlated. That means there is no correlation between these two data. Okay, in statistical terms, correlation denotes association between two quantitative variables. For example, if we take the case of our data, expenditure and sales, yeah, or advertisement cost and sales, yeah, this is what quantitative variables look like. We also assume that the association is linear. That dependent variable increases or decreases based on the independent values on the left. Okay, I'm not going to get too much into statistics. This can be covered in one of the future classes. But if this value changes based on this, so that it's a positive correlation, then you will see a line like this. Okay, I'll come to this in a moment. In this chart, we see a positive slope in the trend line, which means the data is positively correlated. You can also find the correlation between the two values. Okay, and which is called correlation coefficient. I'm not sure whether you guys have done statistics or not, but there's something which is called correlation coefficient, and that indicates what kind of correlation. It can be between -1 and 1. I'm giving you this small history. So if you have not worked with statistics, so don't worry, do not go too much deeply into it. We will talk about it later. Right now, just understand how to create the chart. So the values, like I said, can be between -1 and 1. So 1 would be a perfect positive correlation, and -1 rather would be a perfect negative correlation. And how do you find the correlation coefficient? So there is a function in Excel which is called correl, C-O-R-R-E-L. Yeah, if you type that, you'll see it is asking for an array. So first array is this, comma, second array is this. Both arrays has to be similar size. Close the bracket and press enter, and you get 0.95. So 0.95 is towards the positive side of 1 and not the negative side. So that means there is a high positive correlation. Let me do one thing. Let me create some random values using ran between, and then we can create a scatter plot on that. As the value changes, you will see, because it's a volatile function, you'll see the scatter plot change. I'm going to make this small, zoom in, so that you can also see it. I think this is good enough. And I type ran between. Let's take a value between, let's say 20,000 and 80,000. Okay. Let's close this. Right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this formula on both sides. Right. So every time there's a change, if I press F2 and I press enter, see the values will change because these are ran between. Okay. And I'm going to now create, or rather, let's do one thing. I'm going to copy this chart. And then the reason why I copied this chart and I'm not creating the chart from scratch is so that any newbies can see how to change the chart values by selecting the data. Go to chart design, click on select data, right? And you'll see the chart data range is referring to the old one, change it to the new one and click on OK. Now look at the trend line. Okay. And I'm also going to copy this and I'm going to paste it here. This will tell you what the correlation is, what is the correlation efficient is, and where is the trend line going. So if I keep on making some changes to the cell, see how, okay, now this is minus 0.22. See how the slope is going down? That means it is going towards a -1. Yeah, so I hope you guys have understood how to read these values. Now there are different variations of scatter plot. Okay, so if I go to insert chart, so these are the different variations. So you have scatter with smooth line and markers. You have scatter with smooth lines. That means there's no marker in that. Both are the same. The only thing is if you create this smooth line and if you add a marker, it will become this particular variation. Then you have scatter with straight lines and markers. Similarly, you have scatter with straight lines, no markers. So feel free to change the data chart type, and whatever is your client requirement, use that. Okay. These become easier to read when the data is sorted. Okay. So depending upon the number of data points and the audience requirements, you can choose any of these scatter plots. Okay. Now, regarding the formatting of the data, I've already spoken about formatting in previous videos. There's nothing. I have seen that formatting in the previous video. You can apply the same thing here as well. So if you right click on the axis and click on format axis, you will see it's exactly the same. So I'm not going to take you through this. I've already covered this. Okay. These are the different options, fill and line. Yeah, I've already covered this. So I'm not going to go into this. Let's move on to the next chart, which is a bubble chart. Okay. Come to this sheet. Now, a bubble chart, it is a type of a scatter plot. Okay, because if you go back here, you'll see that they have put bubble inside, I mean, they have clubbed it together. Okay, so it is a type of a scatter plot. If I may say so, it is an advanced scatter chart. Now, why use bubble chart and not a scatter chart? So a bubble chart is helpful when we want to represent 3 sets of data. Here, we had only 2 sets of data, advertisement cost and sales. Here, I have 3 sets of data. I've zoomed in so that you can see it clearly. Otherwise, you have your workbook, so you can see that as well. Right, so we have basic cost, we have sales, and we have profitability. Okay, I'm just taking this basic data. Now, the basic cost can include advertisement cost, it can include any other cost, whatever the company decides. So that's the basic cost, right? And then we have the total sales. This is the total revenue that we have achieved. Let's say in the month of March for these particular publishers, okay, these are the sales that we have achieved, and this is the profitability. So what is profitability? The total sales minus the total cost divided by the total cost. That's what profitability is in simple terms. That will be our third data point. Okay, so when we plot this on a bubbles chart, the basic cost will be plotted on the x-axis and the sales will be plotted on the y-axis. The third data series, profitability, will decide the value of this. Profitability will decide what will be the bubble size. Yeah, so I'm using the x-axis, I'm using the y-axis, and I'm using the bubble size for my third data series. So bigger the profitability, bigger will be the size of the bubble. So let's go ahead and let's plot this data on a bubbles chart, and then we will go ahead and we will interpret the data. Okay, so select this range, F4 to D13, click on the insert tab, and in the charts group, okay, insert a bubble chart. I'll just make it slightly bigger. Let's do some basic customizations. Okay, let's remove the grid lines. I usually do not like grid lines, they clutter up, but feel free to keep them if you like. For the new guys, you can either type directly into the chart or you can select the chart title and press the equal to sign and then select the cell and the chart title will get updated. Okay, now let's format the x-axis. So right click on the axis and say format axis. Minimum, let's keep it at 0. Okay, 50,000 is fine, 5,000, 10,000 is fine. Let's also format the data series. This is also fine. And okay, format data series, area of bubbles is fine. Let's go to fill. Okay, this is something new here, guys, which we did not see in the other formatting of charts. If you see this automatic, there is vary colors by points. Click on that. See what happens. Every bubble is colored differently. Yeah, so you should know this is one thing which is different. Rest again is the same. Let's also add some data labels and then we will format them. Okay, add data labels. Okay, let's also format them. Format data labels. Perfect. And let's choose value from cells. Okay, and I'm going to select A4 to A13. I'm telling you why am I doing this. Okay, I've done that. Okay. This thing that I just did, guys, I just remembered this. This unfortunately is not so simple in Excel 2010 and earlier versions. So if some of you guys are still using this, then you'll not be able to do what I just did. You have to individually go and add data labels. I'll remove the Y value and I'll remove the leader lines. Okay, and let's make the data labels above. But remember one thing, you still can't unfortunately auto place it. You will have to manually shift them around for better interpretation. Okay, let's add a legend key also, so with that we know what color is for what. So gray is Pokemon, Tetris is orange, it'll come here. This is blue, Y Sports, Rebellion, Super Mario. No, we'll take Super Mario on top. We'll take Y Sports down, which is the green section. Super Mario goes here. This is orange, so let it come down here. And Pokemon blue comes here. Right, so you have to manually arrange this. Okay, let's go ahead and let's change the color of this. So you can do it from here, change it to white, increase the size. I've already shown you these customizations, this formatting in previous videos. So this is how you can do it. Now let's go ahead and let's interpret this chart. One moment. I'm just going to move this here, make this big. Right, so let's interpret this chart. So what do you see? I mentioned, if you remember, that the bigger the profitability, the bigger will be the bubble size. But then if I divide this chart into 4 areas, okay, I'll move the chart slightly here. So do you see this separation between column E and column F? You think that that line is passing through this. Okay, and there's one line which is passing through the center. Okay, so Duck Hunt, which is this one, has the highest sales, but it also has a higher cost because it is going towards the right side in the x-axis. Pokemon Red, on the other hand, has a lower cost and a lower sale. But what's the difference? Look at the bubble size. Why is this big and why is this small? That is because it has the most profitability. So if we come here, Pokemon Red, where is it? 428% profitability. And that is the reason why it is big. So what these charts they do is they make the interpretation of data very simple. You just look at it and say, okay, this particular publisher has higher profitability, even though it incurred lesser cost. That's fine. Yeah. So, or look at, let's say, Pokemon Blue. It has a higher cost, little profitability, but higher sales. So this is how you read this chart. But there's one big problem with the bubble chart. Okay, if you remember, I spoke about this when we were doing the area chart. So overlapping of bubbles can cause the smaller values to be hidden. Now, if you look here, the blue is overlapping the green. Right now, you can see a little bit of green. But what if both were same? The green would hide behind the blue. Yeah, you remember the area chart, how it was hiding the other series? And this will not give you the true picture. So this is one big problem with bubble chart. This, of course, can be handled by with leader lines, if you know what leader lines is. So again, right click on data labels, format data labels, and show leader lines. So when you do leader lines, the moment you move the data label far from the chart, from the data point, you'll see the leader line. So if blue was overlapping the green, and if I use green here, I'll immediately come to know, oh, both of them are pointing towards the same bubble. That means there is something below that. Yeah, but then you will have to compensate on the aesthetics of the chart. Too many leader lines can really clutter your chart. Okay. Now, here we selected the data in one shot. If you wish, you can also use the method that I demonstrated in the first video. Do you remember how we created the chart using series and all that? So here what we did was we selected this data and we inserted the chart. So we can do that. And this will be helpful for people who have joined for the first time. Let's delete this chart. Okay. Ensure that your cursor is outside the table. Go to insert and click on bubble chart. Okay, it automatically moved. That's okay. I'm going to delete everything. Or what I'll do is I'll move the thing outside. Okay, it's not letting me do that. Hold on. Insert a blank chart. Yeah, perfect. So now we have a blank chart. So once you do that, guys, go to the chart design and click on select data. You'll be given this dialog box, which is select data source. So if you are in this particular part, which is chart data range, you can go ahead and you can select the entire range. That is one way to do it. But what I want to show you is how to add the series. So click on add, right? In the series name, select publisher. Okay. X values. What are the X values? These are the X values. Perfect. What are the Y values? These are the Y values. Perfect. And the bubble is in the profitability. That's how you do it. And you click on OK. Click on OK, and we get the chart. It's the same bubble chart which we created by selecting the entire data. Now, why did I show you this method? There are a lot of times when your data is not together. It could be in different columns. So you can use this method to add different series to your chart. Okay, moving on to the next chart, which is a box plot. Okay, box plot, guys, is a very important chart. So, right, so box plot or box and whiskers chart. If you have heard the name, it's also called box and whisker chart. It shows the number in quartiles, highlighting the mean values as well as the outliers. Now, you know what a whisker is. You've seen a cat. A cat has whiskers, or of any other feline animal, it has whiskers on the face. So those error bars are known as whiskers. Here, we'll see it once okay, let's do one thing. I just remembered I have created a slide for that. Okay. Oh, yeah, on the day 8, we'll do the data visualization handling a real scenario. Well, we'll clean the data and we'll use a lot of data visualization. Okay, the thing that I want to show you is box and whiskers. Okay, the box plot shows a 5-number summary of the data. So this is your box and whiskers. The first is the minimum value. It is the lowest data point in your entire data. It doesn't, of course, include any outliers. Okay, so that is the lowest point. Then we have the maximum value, which is plotted on the top. This is the highest data point in your data set. This also does not include outliers. Then there is something which is called the median, which is right. You see this line in the center? That's the median. If you have done statistics, if you have created a lot of box and whiskers, then you know what I'm talking about. If you have not worked with box and whiskers, don't worry. I'll just show you a quicker way of creating a box plot and how to customize it. But if you really want to understand the process, then what I'll do is I'll also show you the older way of creating a box chart that will perhaps clear your concept of a box and whisker chart. Then do you see these two squares? This one is the first quartile, or it is also called a lower quadrant. Yeah, it is the median of the lower half of the values. Then we have third, or the upper quartile. It is the median of upper half of the dataset values. Now, many of the times a box plot chart will have lines which extend vertically on the top or down. Like I mentioned, they are called whiskers. So this is how the whiskers look like. Okay, so remember that this is what is called a whisker. And this is the reason why this chart is also called a box and whisker chart. The first time I heard this name, I thought, why would Microsoft name a chart a whisker chart? Because I'm a cat lover. I've got 2 cats, and whisker immediately brings their faces in front of me. So yeah. So in the earlier versions of Microsoft Excel, creating a box plot was very difficult. It required manual calculation of different quartiles. And then you have to create a bar graph or a stacked column and do some customizations and then create a box plot. But with MS Office 365, it became much more easier to create a box plot. Now, anybody can create a box plot using a couple of clicks. Earlier, it was not that easy. Let's go to the box plot sheet. Okay, here I have some sample data of few publishers. And let's say we want to show the distribution of this sales in a box plot. So for people who have earlier versions, can create a box plot using stacked column and a combo chart. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a box plot using the older method, and then I'll do it with the new method. Okay, a box plot, like I mentioned earlier, shows 5-number summary of the data. Okay, so let's populate that. These are the 5. Minimum value, if you remember, then we had a lower quartile, median, upper quartile, and max. There are a lot of ways you can find out these values. So for min value, you can use the min function, or you can use one function which is called quartile. Inclusive quartile, and then you use this array. The moment you press the comma, see what happens. Right, so the quartile function syntax has 2 parts. One is the array, the other is quartile. Array is the range, cell range way of numeric values for which you want the quartile value, or it can be an array itself. So you can, let's say, nest another function which outputs an array. So we have already spoken about functions in the previous video, and we have seen how to work with arrays. The second argument is the quart. This is again a required argument, and it indicates which value to return. So we want the minimum value. So minimum value is 0. Close bracket, press enter, and you get 20,971. You can also use minimum function, and if you select this, you will get the same value. So I'm not using different functions. I've shown you one function, and we'll use the same function for the rest of the summary points. So I'm going to copy this from here, or rather, let's do one thing. I'm going to select this range. Okay, somebody asked me, F4 is not working. This is how you use that. So highlight the range, press F4, and this is how the range becomes a constant. So when you copy the formula down, the range will not change. Yeah. Now let's go to the second one, and let's change the second argument to what do we want? Let's press comma now. It is looking for a lower quartile, which is the first quartile, right? So this becomes 1. Similarly, this becomes 2. This becomes 3, and this becomes 4. So we have got these values. Once you have calculated these values, you have to then find the difference. Guys, this is a manual way of doing it. And the new way, you don't have to do all this. So if your MS Office does not include a box plot, then this is how you do it. Okay, then let's go ahead and let's subtract. Let's get the difference. Sorry, and let's copy this down. So this is what I have here. This is the difference, guys. Now let's do one thing. Let's insert a stacked column chart. So click on insert and click on stacked column. So guys, if you have seen that video, I already showed you how to create a stacked column. So once you have made this, okay, the next thing that you have to do is select data, and then you have to add series to it. Okay, so once you add, the first one that you have to add is the lower quartile, which is this one. Add another series and call it the median. But this time, instead of picking the value, which is 63,000, you'll pick up 33,000. Okay, this is done. Then add a third series, which is the upper quartile. And the value of upper quartile is 6,107. One moment. I always make this mistake in selecting it. So I'm going to delete everything and I'm selecting it again. Okay, perfect. So you should have a plot like this, a stacked plot. Like this, click on OK. I'm just going to minimize, or rather make this small. I'm going to make this slightly bigger. Yeah. Once you have done this, then in the first square, which is the upper quartile, right click on it, or rather do one thing. Click on this plus button and go to the error bars option. Click here and click on more options. Okay, so you've got an error bar, right click, format error bar. Now it is on the upper side, it's a plus, so select vertical error bar as plus. In the error amount, click on custom and specify a value. Now this is a positive value. Okay, so this needs to pick up a positive value, which is, can you guess what is the positive value, guys? This 5962. Click on OK. Done. Similarly, add a lower error. This time it's a minus, custom, specify value, and 8,000. Oh, sorry, not in the positive, it will be in the negative 8,000. Click on OK, and you'll get something like this. Okay, I'll do it again. So I'm going to delete everything. Right, I hope you have understood this part. Okay, you have understood this particular part. Okay, now let's click on insert and go to box plot, or rather, how did we do it? Okay, let's do that only. Recommended chart, all charts, box and whisker, click on OK. Okay, and I'm going to delete everything. Blank chart. To select data, remove everything. So you have a blank chart. Or this, sorry, I went ahead. I shouldn't be doing that. We were creating a stacked column. Right. So have you created a stacked column? Blank. So how do you do that? Once again, click on the insert tab, go to 2D column, select the second option, which is a stacked column. Make it slightly bigger. I'm also doing that so that you can also see it. It's a blank chart. Fair enough. Click on select data. Now we are going to add our 3 series. Okay. So the first series that we are going to add is a lower quartile. Okay. So let's go to PowerPoint for a moment. So if you look at this chart, this is nothing but a stacked column. There is a third box at the bottom, but we can't see that. So imagine that there's a third. So there are 3 data points, and those are stacked charts. Okay, let's go back. And we are here. Perfect. Now, the first series that we will add is the lowest one, which is the lowest part of the stack column, and we'll call it a lower quartile. The value that we will select is 29,877, and we'll click on OK. Okay, great. Once you have added the lower quartile, click on add again, and this time you have to select the median, the series name. The value of the median comes from 33,860. Click on OK. Then add a third series, okay, and it's called an upper quartile. The value of the upper quartile is picked up from 6107, and we have got this. So get this first. Now, if you look at this, this is a stacked column. You remember the stacked column chart, right? One above the other. So this is what we have achieved. Perfect. Click on OK. Right. So this is our stacked column, which is ready. Now click on the first top square. Click on this plus sign chart element. You can also insert it from the chart design add element. And go to more options in the error bars. Now, since this is on the top, we are doing it for the positive value. So direction is on the plus. So click on plus. Select that. Once that's done, the error amount, go to custom and specify a value, Now you'll be given two options, positive error value, negative error value. Since we are doing it for the positive error value will be 5962. Okay, and click on OK. Perfect. Similarly, add another, but this time choose minus. And in custom, specify a value, but this time do not type in positive error value, type in negative, because we are doing on the negative direction. And this time the lower value, which is 8906. So you'll have something like this. Everybody here is with me till here? Once again, this part I'll do once again. Hold on. So once this stack chart is ready, click on this particular box, yeah, and add the error bar. In the error bar, since you're doing it in the positive direction, select plus, then select custom, and in the specify value, since it's a positive direction, you will choose the 5962, which is the max value difference, and click on OK. Similarly, you'll select the last square, okay, and add error bar again using more options. This time, instead of plus, you'll select minus, and in the custom value, you will select for the negative error value, not for the positive. Do not put it here, otherwise you'll not get the right value. Select this area and select 8906 and click on OK. Okay, so this is done. Next thing you have to do is select the last box, which is the blue one. Okay, go to format and remove the color and delete the grid lines. This is what your box plot looks like. This is how people used to make it in the earlier versions of Excel. Okay, there's one more thing. Now let's calculate the average, and I'll tell you the importance of this. So once you calculate average, the value is 52619. Okay, let's do one thing. I'll hold on to this for a moment. I'll come to this in a short while. Let me first show you. I'm going to make this chart smaller. Okay, this is for comparison. I'm going to show you how you can do it in Office 365. It is much more easier. You will actually use that method only if you have Office 365. I've stopped creating box whiskers like this. So what you have to do, okay, select the data. See how simple it is. Select the data, go to insert, okay, and then select box and whisker and click on OK. That's all you have to do in Office 365. Yeah, but ensure one thing, click on inclusive median, because I have used quartile.inclusive. If it is exclusive, then change that to exclusive median. So now this chart and this chart look the same. So if I delete this, I'm going to delete the chart title. Oh, sorry. I'm going to delete the chart title for a moment, and I'm going to reduce this. Okay, and I'm going to reduce this as well. And you'll see that both box plots are similar. So obviously, I know that you will always prefer the second option rather than the first one. But you should know the first one, because there are a lot of times when you are working with a client who has not upgraded to Office 365, and they may ask you to create a box plot and you will not know how to create it. So remember that the box plot is based on these 5 values. Now let's customize this box plot. Okay, so I'm going to right click on it and click on add data labels. Now, do you see this series of 52,619? That's the average. So how do you plot it in this? Make this small. I'm going to take you through this quickly, but I'm going to explain this in one of the future videos, probably the next to next one, okay, because that's where I talk about combo charts. So what you have to do is right click on this chart and click on select data. Here we have already added 3 series. Let's add one more, which is called the average, and the value of this average is 52. Click on OK and click on OK. So what is happening here, since it's a stacked column, it added the average on top of that. No problem. Click on chart design, click on change chart type. In the last one, which is combo chart, scroll down and change the average to a line with marker and click on OK. Don't go too much into this. I will be talking about combo charts in the next to next video. Rest remains stacked column. Only the average become lines with markers, and you click on OK. And now see this dot, which is 52,619. Formatting these values is also very simple. Right click on it, format data labels. You have already seen these, so I'm not going to cover this. These are the different options which are same as the other charts. So this is how you create a box plot. The most challenging part, I believe, is the error bars, on how to add the error bars and how to set the values. Once you understand that, it'll be much more easier. Okay, coming to the last chart of the day, yeah, which is tree map. So come to tree map. I have some basic data here. I'll talk about the data in a moment. So tree map is a very simple chart which uses rectangular boxes to show hierarchical data in a compact graph. They are commonly used for displaying, for example, population, sales, like we have here, or best selling items. So if you have a stationery shop and you have different items, you want to know which is the highest selling item, you can use tree map. Here I have some sample sales for the publisher across specific genre. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 publishers, and we have got 3 genres for each of them: adventure, puzzle, strategy, and so on. And these are their March sales. I will explain how to interpret the chart shortly, but let's first create the chart. Creating the chart is very simple, just like the other charts. Okay, so what you have to do is just select all the data. Yeah, go to insert, go to all charts, click on tree map, and click on OK. As simple as that. Okay, I am going to zoom this a bit. Hold on. I think this is good enough. And I'm going to make this smaller. Okay, now let's interpret this chart. How does it work? Generally, a tree map has three major sections. The first is the chart title. So you can edit the chart title. Second is the plot area. Now the legend is on top, but you can also say legend is second or third, it doesn't matter. So the three parts. Okay, so the first is the chart title. You can give any descriptive name to the chart. Yeah, and you can place it in any suitable position, up to you. The second is the legend. This legend, like as you already know, if you've already been attending sessions, what legend is. For people who are new, legend generally denotes the color of each data category to make it easier to compare them. That's the most simplest example that I could think of on how to explain legends. Okay. Otherwise, legends also tell you what section is for what when you look at the chart. The third section in this tree map is the plot area. So how do you know this is a plot area? I explained that. Go to format, and here you can select different options. So if you are selecting, if your cursor is outside, click on chart, go to format, and then click on plot area. So this is the plot area. This is the portion where we generate the visual representation using rectangles. Okay, so there'll be different size rectangles, smaller, bigger, and different kind of rectangles. So what exactly is happening here? What Excel does is, depending upon the sale, so let's look at Tentactile Studios. And here we have 12,000, 41,000, 18,000. See how it has arranged the sales. Similarly for 20th Century Fox, these are the sales, and so on. It's very simple to read a tree map chart, right? You can also add data labels. So right click, okay. And before this is already data labels, but if you want the series name, you can add that. You can add values as well. Yeah, in case you do not want values, remove that. Ideally, when you are creating a tree map, people are least bothered with values. It's like the pie chart, if you remember. They want to see the size of the portion, how big or how small it is, so that they quickly come to a particular conclusion. But if your audience wants values, you can give values. Otherwise, you can choose to ignore them. Okay, now there's something which is called a banner. So click on any plot area, any part of the plot area, right click on it and click on format data series. When you click on data series, format data series, you're presented with this option. There are different label options. First is none. When you do none, see what happens. What disappeared on the chart? Try it. But if you click on banner, the name of the publishers go on top. See, above the data. And if you do overlapping, the publisher names comes inside the rectangle. So again, this is up to you guys where you want to show the name of the publishers. If you click on none, the name of the publishers will not show. It's okay not to show them because the legend color already tells what that is. Or you can click on banner, right? And then delete the legend. You can do that as well. Completely up to you. This is your canvas. Design it as you want it. Yeah, but obviously there are a few things that you need to take care of. That is, how would my client want it to be shown? So this is all about tree map. There's nothing much to it. Yeah, you can't. The only problem with a tree map, guys, is if you have lots and lots of data, then you'll not be able to make head or tail because it'll become so small boxes. So if you remember the very first session that we did, we imported about some 8,000 odd rows of data, which had more than 100 publishers. Imagine plotting that on this. Your audience will go berserk. You will go berserk. You'll not understand what the chart is trying to show you. So, well, these are the 4 charts that we covered today.